In VKontakte messages and in the comments, you often asked me to make an issue about Edward Didskalninsha's coral castle in Florida. The topic is really interesting and very ambiguous. This structure is truly unique, and without exaggeration, shrouded in great mystery. Many representatives of modern science have conducted repeated studies trying to understand how a skinny Latvian with a height of 1.5 meters and a weight of 50 kilograms managed to move and install multi-ton stone blocks. Later, they allegedly just threw up their hands and called the castle a new wonder of the world. Today, I would like to talk about this megalithic structure and also draw your attention to some notable aspects. There is a legend that Edward's bride allegedly refused to marry him on the eve of the wedding because he was poor, and she did not see her future with him. Out of grief, he allegedly begins to travel and eventually settles in Florida and buys himself 4 acres of land there, which were sold for negligible money. The story is certainly romantic, but we are not interested in it at all, so I will not go into details. Edward built his coral castle for 28 years, after which his already weak health was shaken, and he went to the hospital and later left us. This structure is really unique. At the entrance to the castle, visitors are greeted by a huge 9-ton revolving stone door. It turned out that the door was held on a rusty suspension from an old truck. How it was established, none of the scientists can still understand. Also, allegedly, when the researchers tried to remove it for the first time, this suspension crumbled into dust. The engineers called in to reinstall the stone door in quotes never ceased to wonder how it could hold at all, and most importantly, how one person could pull it all off. Moreover, for the reverse installation, the workers needed a crane. Also, the megalithic complex includes a crescent moon, which reaches its mass of 30 tons, and many other figures from 18 to the same 30 tons. For construction, he sometimes used the simplest, primitive tools. A homemade generator was also found in the castle. All the blocks consisted of coral limestone, which he, in an incomprehensible way, extracted alone and transported with the help of an old truck to the construction site. Also, all sources indicate that allegedly, when interviewing neighbors, they said that his stones flew through the air during construction. I do not know how much this information corresponds to reality, but nevertheless there are these statements. The most surprising thing for me is that the master hid all this from prying eyes. So the method was, to put it mildly, extraordinary. When interviewing the truck driver who transported the blocks to their destination, it turned out he had to leave the truck at specified location, after which he came, and the blocks were already loaded. Strange, isn't it? Why all this secrecy? There are more and more questions. Also, Edward carried out most of the work in his castle at night, including a small lantern, so that no one would inadvertently see the construction process itself. The question is why? What was so secret about this construction that we had to go to such extreme measures? Maybe he really mastered some ancient way of building. Egyptologists who studied the pyramids and came to the scene were simply shocked. They decided that Edward allegedly discovered some ancient secret of construction, according to which all megalithic structures were built all over the planet. Edward himself, who was fond of astronomy and the history of ancient Egypt, also confirmed during his lifetime that he really discovered the ancient Egyptian way of building pyramids. But in fact, it has nothing to do with the construction of pyramids from the word at all. Firstly, the Egyptians had no idea and still do not have how to build these pyramids on their own. Secondly, I have already shown in previous issues wall drawings showing a detailed way to build these pyramids. They were built by people, to put it mildly, not quite our height. The Egyptians considered them gods. According to their beliefs, these gods gave them these megalithic buildings for use. Thirdly, on the ancient stele on the way to the Pyramid of Cheops, it was also said that the pyramids were built by people who were unusually tall and had technologies similar to magic. When the researchers showed interest in her, the Egyptian government ordered to immure the stela in the wall of the Cairo Museum, so as not to spoil the beautiful legend about the construction of their pyramids. I got acquainted with some versions, some researchers, and most of them seemed to me to put it mildly far-fetched, and some completely inadequate. Someone even seriously puts forward a version about a UFO that helped him build this castle. I will not consider them even close. But here's one that seemed very interesting to me. The fact is that the neighbors also reported that they sometimes noticed that Edward was tying some wires to his stones, and installing an incomprehensible iron box on the top of the block. Ray Stoner, who wrote a whole book about this coral castle, suggests that perhaps in this way he created some kind of electromagnetic field that changed the weight of the stones and created an anti-gravity effect. This question should of course be attributed to physicists, since they are more competent in this field. But still, the version has the right to exist. This, by the way, can also explain the testimony of neighbors about flying stones. The Spanish sculptor José Manuel may also know the answer. The artist works mainly with granite and quartz. In his hands, the stones literally turn into platelin. See what can be done with a stone without the help of brute force and using only the brain. How he does it also remains a mystery. The master carefully protects his secret. Of all this, friends, I want to say only one thing. We have been talking about melting or softening of stones in ancient times for a long time. About technologies that were completely different than scientists imagine. But in response, they twist their finger at the temple and offer us a version about ancient slaves, hundreds of years of construction and rough human labor. But under their noses, modern enthusiasts in practice smash their theories to smithereens. In general, friends, there are a lot of unknowns in this castle story. To understand the full picture, the available data is not enough. We can only guess what kind of method Edward used to build his creation. His method of construction turned out to be no less effective than the ancients. In conclusion, I would like to conclude. In fact, a person is born to use the brain and not just brute physical force, as evolutionists are trying to convince us. For myself, I realized one thing from this story. It is not the strongest who survives, but the smartest. And so it has been at all times.